Welcome to Living Anatomy. This video is dedicated to the muscles for your first muscle practical. We will be using yoga and Pilates exercises to experience the muscle locations and actions on your own body. Please be mindful as you move through this practice, and if anything feels uncomfortable or painful, please stop. Feel free to move along with the video, or if an exercise seems a little confusing, watch it first and then go back and try it with the video. Before each exercise is a description of the muscle. Feel free to navigate through the video with these slides. The first muscle we will talk about is the diaphragm. It originates at the inferior border of the ribs and sternum, the last 6 ribs and lumbar vertebrae. It inserts on the central tendon, and its action is to flatten to increase the thoracic volume for inspiration, so breathing in. So start by coming to a comfortable seat. You can cross the legs in front of you. Sometimes it's nice to sit on something just to get the hips a little higher than the knees. I'm sitting on a block. You can find a yoga block or use something that's around your house like some books or a stack of blankets or towels. To experience the action of the diaphragm, we will be using a breathing technique from yoga, most commonly referred to as a 3-part breath. Go ahead and place one hand just above your navel and the other hand over your heart. And then start to breathe normally. Just notice your natural rhythm of breath without trying to control it just yet. Then start to deepen your breath. As you inhale, allow the belly to really relax and expand. Then allow the breath to rise through the chest, through the middle part of the chest, and then eventually to the upper part of the chest, so you almost feel your clavicles rising. And then as you exhale, allow the entire rib cage to soften and relax. Inhale into the belly, into the middle part of the chest, into the upper chest, allowing the hand on the heart to rise. And exhale, allow the entire rib cage to soften down. Inhale into the belly, the middle chest, the upper chest, and exhale all of that air out. As you continue this pattern of breathing, start to imagine the movement of the diaphragm. As you inhale, the diaphragm contracts and flattens. It draws air in and allows the thoracic cavity to increase in volume. As you exhale, the diaphragm relaxes and comes back to its dome-like shape, and the volume in the thoracic cavity decreases. Notice as you breathe that the hand that's right over the sternum senses the change in thoracic volume as you're inhaling and exhaling. Feel free to continue this pattern of breathing for as long as you like. Inhaling into the belly, the middle part of the chest, allowing the upper part of the chest to rise, and then allowing the entire thoracic cavity to relax as you exhale. Next, we will talk about 2 muscles that assist in breathing, the external intercostals and the internal intercostals. The external intercostals originate from the inferior border of the rib above and insert onto the superior border of the rib below. The action is to elevate the rib cage during inspiration. From your seated position, go ahead and place each hand on either side of the rib cage. From here, as you breathe in, you can feel the rib cage rise. This is the action of the external intercostals. Continue to breathe normally, but notice with your hands on the side of your rib cage the direct feedback that you get as you inhale. You can feel how the rib cage lifts up as you inhale. and then how it softens as you exhale. Mostly focus on your inhalation for the moment. Notice how the rib cage moves. In order to remember the origin and insertion for the external intercostals, think about the action. Because the external intercostals elevate the rib cage, they're going to be drawing the bottom ribs up towards the top ribs. The insertion will always be moving towards the origin. So, in this case, the insertion will be the superior border of the rib below, moving towards the inferior border of the rib above, allowing the entire rib cage to rise as you inhale. Next, let's talk about the internal intercostals. They originate from the superior border of the rib below to the inferior border of the rib above. And the action is to depress the rib cage during expiration, so when you breathe out. So keep the hands on the sides of the rib cage and breathe normally. But this time, start to notice your exhalation. Notice how the rib cage softens and falls as you exhale the air out of the lungs. Take a few more deep breaths and notice your exhalation, how the internal intercostals depress the rib cage. It softens. The easiest way to remember the origin and insertion for the internal intercostals is again to think about the action. Because the internal intercostals depress the rib cage, the insertion needs to move towards the origin. So the insertion, being the inferior border of the rib above, is going to move towards the origin, which is the superior border of the rib below. So the entire direction of movement is down, or depression of the rib cage. Feel free to continue this breathing pattern for as long as you like, noticing which muscles are active in each part of your breath. Next, we will move on to talk about some of the abdominal muscles. The first one being the deepest abdominal muscle, the transverse abdominis. The transverse abdominis originates at the inguinal ligament, the iliac crest, and the lumbar fascia. It inserts into the linea alba and the pubic crest, and the action of the transverse abdominis is to compress the abdomen to support the abdominal viscera, or the abdominal organs. I like to think of the transverse abdominis as kind of a corset muscle because it wraps all the way around your midsection. And we know from the name of the muscle, transverse abdominis, that the fibers run in the transverse plane of the body, so the horizontal plane. This muscle can most easily be felt when you cough or when you laugh, and you feel that pull of the navel in towards the spine. That's the transverse abdominis activating. So go ahead and take a couple coughs or laugh a little bit, like just to see and feel the transverse abdominis. In yoga and Pilates, we want to strengthen the transverse abdominis because it is so crucial to posture and deep core strength. The first exercise we will do to find and become aware of your transverse abdominis is called Kapalabhati breathing. This is a breathing technique from yoga. Feel free to bring the hands above and below the navel to give you a little more awareness of how your transverse abdominis has to work. Using your exhale, you're going to actively draw your navel in toward your spine, pull it away from your hands, and then exhale out through your nose, like this. Almost like you're trying to snuff out a candle with your nose. Here's another view to help you see how the transverse abdominis is active. As I exhale, you can see how my navel pulls right into my spine. I'm actively drawing it in on each exhale. I can even feel the sides of my waist cinch in because those fibers run all the way around the midsection. To do Kapalabhati breathing, come to a comfortable seat. Have your hands on your thigh bones, and then use your navel, draw it in towards your spine as you forcibly exhale the air out your nose, like this. Continue to do that style of breathing for 10 to 15 breaths. Then take a nice deep breath in and exhale all of the air out. Breathe normally now. We will do another round of Kapalabhati breathing, and this time we will do about 30 repetitions, so 30 active exhales. Really use your transverse abdominis to pull in toward your spine and actively exhale out through the nose. Take a nice deep breath in, and then start your exhales. Exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Exhale all the air out. Take a nice deep breath in and exhale out through your mouth this time. Nice job. Another way to understand how the transverse abdominis compresses the abdomen and supports the abdominal viscera is to use a little bit more of an endurance exercise. So come onto hands and knees. Make sure your hands are right underneath your shoulders and your knees are right underneath your hip sockets. And then I want you to inhale and really let your belly drop down towards the ground. And then use your exhale to pick the navel right up towards the spine, really hug it in, almost like you're trying to resist gravity. Try that a few more times. Allow the organs to drop down on your inhale, and then draw them in toward your spine as you exhale. Make sure that the spine stays in one long and supported position in this exercise. Don't let it round or change shape just because you're drawing your navel in. It really is just a release of the belly towards the floor and then a pick up of the navel right in towards the spine to activate your transverse abdominis. Continue to do this a few more times on your own. Now see if you can continue to draw your navel in towards the spine and cinch the waist as you breathe in and out. So your inhales and your exhales, you're drawing your navel in towards the spine, keeping your transverse abdominis active. You can stay here, or if you'd like to add a little bit more of a challenge, you can reach your right leg back behind you. Continue to draw your navel in toward your spine and cinch your waists towards the midline of your body. This keeps your transverse abdominis very active. So reach your right leg back behind you and float the heel up so it's about hip height. Make sure your hips stay square towards the floor so they don't open up to the side of the room, and you have an even amount of weight in your hands. Take a few deep breaths here and try to really reach out through your spine. Then go ahead and bring that knee down. Try the same thing on your left side. Reach your left leg back behind you, get very long, and then lift the heel up to hip height, not above hip height. Your goal is to keep your navel drawing in toward your spine and to keep reaching out through your heel and through the crown of the head. Then go ahead and bring your left leg down. Go ahead and come back to the right side. Reach the right leg up, and you can stay here or give yourself even more of a challenge and reach your left arm forward in front of you. So the palm faces the midline and your shoulder is long down your back. Continue to draw your navel up in toward your spine and don't let the lower back dip. Keep it lifted. Take your breath in and then use your exhale to bring the hand and knee down to the mat. Try the same thing on the left side. Reach your left leg back behind you. You can stay here. You can lift the heel up. You can stay here with the heel lifted, or you can add the right arm reaching forward with the palm facing in. Continue to breathe, draw your navel in toward your spine. The way to stabilize and balance it here is to really activate your transverse abdominis by hugging it in. On your next exhale, go ahead and draw your knee down towards the mat, and same with the hand, and come back to hands and knees. Good job. The next muscle we will experience is the serratus anterior. This originates at the lateral aspect of ribs 1 through 8. It inserts onto the medial border of the anterior scapula, and it protracts and upwardly rotates the scapula. To experience how the serratus anterior protracts and upwardly rotates the scapula, we will do some serratus push-ups. So go ahead and come back to your hands and knees. Hands are right underneath your shoulders and knees right underneath your hip sockets. The spine is long and supported by drawing your navel up and away from the floor. Once in this position, draw your scapula down your back so your neck lengthens. Keep this and then start to draw your shoulder blades together on the back, letting your heart sink down, and then strongly push the shoulder blades away from each other so the upper back slightly rounds and you push yourself away from the floor. Draw the shoulder blades together and then push them as far away from each other as you can. As you continue to do this type of motion, make sure that the shoulder blades don't come up towards the ears. You want to have a nice long neck in this position. And that way you'll feel the serratus anterior working a little bit more. This protraction of the scapula, where they round around the sides of the rib cage, is how the serratus anterior is activated. To feel this a little better, tuck your toes and then hover your knees just 2 inches off of the mat and really try to keep the neck long and the shoulder blades wrapping around your rib cage. Go ahead and bring your knees down to the mat. Use your next exhale to come right back up. Continue to wrap the scapula around the rib cage and draw them down the back. Continue to pull your navel up and towards your spine. And then go ahead and bring the knees back down again. On your next exhale, float right back up. Feel how the sides of the body feel activated, especially right next to the rib cage. Lower the knees back down. If you'd like a little bit more of a challenge, try the serratus push-up with the knees hovering off of the mat. On your exhale, float your knees off of the mat. Continuously draw your navel in toward your spine and reach the scapula down your back towards your pelvis. Then draw the scapula together and then press them far apart from each other. Draw them together, press them apart. Draw them together, press them apart. Draw together, press apart, and then bring your knees back down to the mat. Take a breath in and exhale. The next muscle we will discuss is the sternocleidomastoid. It originates in 2 places, the manubrium of the sternum and the medial clavicle, and it inserts onto the mastoid process of the temporal bone. It has a few actions. When both contract, it flexes the neck. When one contracts, it bends the head and neck laterally, and it can also rotate to the opposite side. So find a comfortable seat once again, and just have the hands resting on the thigh bones. Let's go over the actions of the sternocleidomastoid. When both contract, the chin draws towards the sternum. When only one contracts, your ear draws towards your shoulder, so it flexes the neck laterally. And when one contracts, you will turn your head to the opposite side. So if your left contracts, you're turning your chin towards the right. Try that again. Feel free to place your hands on your neck and feel the contraction of the sternocleidomastoids on either side, and notice when they are firing and when they are not firing. To feel how the sternocleidomastoid works against gravity, go ahead and come onto your back with your feet planted on the mat about hips distance apart. Simply lift your head off of the mat, draw your chin toward your chest as if you were going to look at your thigh bones, and then place your head back down on the mat. Do this a few more times, lifting your chin toward your chest and then bringing the head back down towards the mat. You can feel how both the right and the left sternocleidomastoids are working together to lift your head off of the floor. This action is the first action that happens when we prepare for abdominal work. You must first flex your neck by using the sternocleidomastoids in order to then recruit the abdominals to flex the first part of the thoracic spine off of the mat. The rectus abdominis originates at the pubic crest and symphysis, and it inserts onto the xiphoid process of the sternum and the costal cartilages of ribs 5 through 7. Its action is to flex the vertebral column. To demonstrate this action, lay on your back with your feet flat on the mat about hips distance apart. On your exhale, you will nod your chin towards your chest, reach your arms forward, and peel your shoulders off of the mat. Here the rectus abdominis is flexed, and that's what's lifting the upper body off of the mat. Try this again. Do this on your exhale. Reach the arms forward, lift the head off of the mat, and peel your spine off the mat. Then bring your spine back down to the mat. Take a breath in. Try one more time. Use your exhale, reach forward, peel the upper spine off of the mat. On your next exhale, bring the spine back down to the mat. Take a breath in, and then exhale out through the mouth. The exercise that best demonstrates the action of the rectus abdominis in the classical Pilates repertoire is the hundreds. We did this in the last video for the bones, but we'll do it again here and focus on the action of the rectus abdominis. The hundreds uses a specific breathing pattern where you inhale for 5 counts and you exhale for 5 counts. You do this 10 times, making 100 repetitions. While you're doing this, you are also pumping your arms in a very specific and percussive manner. To prepare for the hundreds, start by using your exhale to draw your navel in toward your spine. Give your pelvis a small tuck so that the lower back comes a little bit closer towards the floor. Then bring your right leg up to a tabletop position, followed by your left leg. Reaffirm that connection of drawing your navel in toward your spine. Keep this for the entire exercise. Go ahead and bend your elbows so that they're right next to your rib cage and your fingertips are reaching up towards the sky. On your next exhale, straighten the arms and curl your head, neck, and shoulders off of the mat. Strongly reach through your arms and make sure the upper back is off of the mat. Now straighten your legs long on a 45-degree angle from the floor and bring the heels together and toes apart. Then start to pump your arms. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Stay curled up. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Really reach out through your arms and your toes. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. Last one. Exhale 2, 3, 4, 5. And then bend your knees in, bend your elbows, and then bring your head, neck, and shoulders back down to the mat. Straighten the arms down beside you, and one at a time bring the feet back to the mat. Take a nice deep breath in through the nose, and then exhale out through the mouth. Good job. Next, we will experience the external and internal oblique muscles. The external obliques originate at the anterior surface of the last 8 ribs. They insert onto the linea alba, the pubic crest and tubercles, and the iliac crest. And their action is to flex and rotate the vertebral column, lateral flexion and compression of the abdomen. The internal oblique muscles originate at the inguinal ligament, the iliac crest, and the lumbar fascia. They insert onto the linea alba, the pubic crest, and the costal cartilage of the last 3 ribs. Their action is also to flex and rotate the vertebral column, lateral flexion, and compression of the abdomen. Because these muscles have the same actions, we can use the same exercise to experience these muscles. So go ahead and come onto your back. Have your feet flat on the mat about hips distance apart. We will be using Pilates crisscross as the exercise to demonstrate the actions of flexion and rotation for the internal and external obliques. Start by drawing your navel in towards your spine. Then on your next exhale, float your right leg up to a tabletop position and bring the left leg up to meet it. Bring your hands behind your head, and then on your next exhale, curl your head, neck, and shoulders off of the mat. Be sure to keep the head nice and heavy into the palms so that you're not straining your neck while you work. Straighten your left leg and curl towards the right side of the room. Then bring yourself back to center and twist to the opposite side. So straighten one leg, twist towards the bent knee. Come back to center. Straighten the opposite leg, twist towards the bent knee. Continue this, coming back to center each time. Be very precise on how you're moving. As you straighten the leg, you twist towards the bent knee. Use your exhales as you twist. Now take the center portion out and just twist from right to left sides, twisting and twisting, switching each time. Continue to breathe steadily. Continue to draw your navel in towards your spine and start to feel how the sides of the waist are working, where your internal and external obliques are located. To come down, bring the knees back to tabletop, lower the head down, and then one leg at a time, bring the feet back down to the mat. Once you're down, take a nice deep breath in and exhale. Our next muscle is the trapezius. The trapezius originates at the occipital bone, the spine of C7, and all thoracic vertebrae. It inserts onto the lateral clavicle, acromion, and spine of the scapula. And its action is to raise and rotate and retract the scapula, as well as neck extension. To experience the actions of the trapezius muscle, we will be using a cobra pose from yoga. To start off, lay down on your stomach. Have your legs long behind you and your forehead on the ground. Then bring your hands right next to your lowest ribs. Draw your shoulders away from the floor. Then lift your head off of the floor and try to look in front of you. This is the neck extension action of the trapezius muscle. Lift your head off of the mat, look in front of you, and then softly lower your head back down to the mat. Inhale, lift your head up, and exhale, lower the head back down. Inhale, lift your head up, and exhale, lower your head back down to the mat. To experience the retraction of the scapula by the trapezius muscle, try doing the same action with the hands hovered off of the mat. By drawing your scapula together and extending your neck, you're using more fibers of the trapezius muscle. Try this a few more times. Lift your head off the mat and hover the arms, drawing your shoulder blades together. And then bring your head back down and the arms back down to the mat. Lengthen the arms down by your sides, palms face up, and rest. The latissimus dorsi originates at the spinous processes of T7 all the way through L5. It also originates at the last 4 ribs and the iliac crest. It inserts onto the intertubercle sulcus of the humerus. Its action is to extend and adduct the shoulder as well as medially rotate the humerus. This is a very broad muscle that eventually inserts onto one point on the humerus. Another muscle shares the insertion point and action of the latissimus dorsi, and that is the teres major. Teres major originates at the posterior surface at the inferior angle of the scapula. It inserts onto the intertubercle sulcus of the humerus, and its action is to extend and adduct the shoulder, as well as medially rotate the humerus. Although teres major has the same insertion and action of the latissimus dorsi, teres major is much smaller in surface area, and therefore not as powerful of a muscle. Because the latissimus dorsi and teres major have the same action, we will use Shalabhasana, locust pose from yoga, to experience these two muscles. Start by laying down on your stomach. Make sure your palms are face up towards the sky. This ensures that your humerus is medially rotated. On your exhale, draw your navel up in toward your spine and lengthen out your legs. Then float your arms off of the mat, palms reaching up towards the sky. This activates both the latissimus dorsi and the teres major. Then allow the palms to float back down to the earth. Go ahead and raise the arms again, and this time lift the head off of the mat. Then bring the head back down as well as the arms. On your inhale, lift the arms, lift the head up. Really reach the arms back behind you. Try to reach them up towards the sky. Try this one more time on your own. Use your inhale to float your hands up, lift your head, neck, and shoulders off of the mat. Keep pressing the arms up towards the sky, and then carefully bring your head, neck, and shoulders back down to the earth. To stretch the latissimus dorsi, flip over onto your back. Have your feet flat on the mat and about hips distance apart. We will be flexing the shoulder to stretch the latissimus dorsi. So reach your arms over your head. Go ahead and bring them back down by your hips. Really try to keep your lowest ribs glued into the mat as you reach your arms overhead. When they pop up, you don't actually stretch the latissimus dorsi. They must stay down into the mat to give a proper stretch. Do this on your own a few more times, using your breath as you reach the arms overhead and allowing the rib cage to stay nice and still, and then floating the arms back down beside your body. Feel free to hold the arms overhead for a few breaths to see if that changes any sensations in your latissimus dorsi muscles or your teres major muscles. Notice, and then bring the hands back down to your hips. The rhomboid major, the larger of the two rhomboid muscles, originates at the spinous processes of T2 to T5. It inserts onto the medial border of the scapula, and its action is to adduct, retract, elevate, and rotate the scapula. The rhomboid minor, the smaller of the two, originates at the spinous processes of C7 and T1. It inserts onto the medial border of the scapula, and it retracts and stabilizes the scapula. Of the two rhomboid muscles, the rhomboid minor is above the rhomboid major, but again, the rhomboid major is the larger of these two rhomboid muscles. Both the rhomboid major and rhomboid minor retract the scapula. To experience this, we will be doing Shalabhasana, locust pose, like we did before, but this time we will be focusing on the retraction of the scapula, and we will also add another challenging element, the legs and a bound position with the arms. Start laying down on your stomach. Reach your legs long behind you and have your palms facing the floor. Draw your navel in toward your spine to support the lowest part of the back. Then lift your scapula and draw them towards each other, allowing your arms to lift off of the mat. Bring the scapula together and then carefully release them. Do that a few times just to start off with. This is one of the actions that both rhomboid muscles do. Now see if you can add your legs to this. Once your head is off of the mat and your scapula is reaching together, lengthen the legs so far behind you that they lift off of the mat. Then all in one piece, come back down to the mat. Try this again just with the head and the shoulder blades. You draw the scapula towards each other and you lift the head off the mat, then carefully return it. Shoulder blades draw together, allowing the rhomboids to activate. Head lifts, and then you lower it all down. Now go ahead and add the legs again. So you draw the scapula together, you lift the head, and you reach the legs so far behind you that they lift off of the mat. Then you lower everything down. If you'd like a little bit more of a challenge, try using a bind. Interlace your hands at the small of your back. Keep drawing your navel in toward your spine, and then draw your scapula towards each other and straighten your arms down towards your heels, allowing your head to lift off of the mat. Then lower the head back down and bend the elbows, returning the hands to the small of the back. Try this a couple more times. Really notice how your scapula have to draw together. This retraction is an action that both the rhomboid major and the rhomboid minor do. Also notice the large stretch that you get at the front of the chest. To do the full version of Shalabhasana, we will add the legs. So you reach the arms long towards the heels, lift the head and the legs off of the mat. Inhale here, and then carefully lower down, nice and slow. Everything arrives at the same time. Go ahead and release your bind, and then turn your head to one side or the other and rest. The pectoralis major originates at the clavicle, the sternum, and the cartilages of ribs 1 through 6. It inserts on the intertubercle sulcus of the humerus, and its action is shoulder flexion, shoulder adduction, and medial rotation of the arm. To demonstrate these actions, we will be doing Anjali Mudra, or hands in front of the heart. So simply come into a standing position with the feet underneath you. Make the legs very strong. Draw your navel in toward your spine, and then bring your hands in front of your heart. This position with the hands is called Anjali Mudra. From here, press the hands strongly together. You will feel the pectoralis muscles start to fire. Release your pressure, and then press them together again. Do this a few more times, strongly pressing your hands together and then softly releasing them. This action is primarily demonstrating the shoulder adduction, or drawing the shoulders closer towards the body. This also has a little bit of the shoulder flexion action. As you press your hands strongly together and then softly relaxing them, you may want to look down and see if you can watch your pectoralis major contract and relax. Watching as well as feeling the actions of the pectoralis major will give you a better sense of how the muscle works and where it is located. Once you are finished, go ahead and draw your hands down by your sides and come back to your nice strong standing pose of Tadasana. The pectoralis minor originates at the anterior surface of ribs 3 through 5. It inserts onto the coracoid process of the scapula, and its action is to draw the scapula forward and inferiorly. The pectoralis minor is a smaller muscle than the pectoralis major. It also lies underneath or deep to the pectoralis major. To get a sense of how the pectoralis minor works inside the body, we will stretch it. So come to a standing position. Have your feet flat on the floor, the legs are strong, and draw your navel in toward your spine. Then go ahead and bring your hands behind your back and try grabbing opposite elbows. Draw your scapula towards each other and see if you can feel a stretch right at the front of the shoulder. If you'd like to feel a more extreme stretch, draw your hands together and interlace them. Then straighten the arms like they were reaching down towards your heels. To give you a better idea of these two positions, I will turn around. Grab opposite elbows first, and then draw your scapula towards each other so that the front of the shoulder stretches. If you'd like the more extreme version, interlace the hands behind your back and then straighten the arms. Be careful not to overextend the elbow joint. It's nice to keep a small bend in the elbows in this position, and you will still feel the pectoralis minor stretching. Try these positions with the arms a few times. See which one helps you feel the stretch of the pectoralis minor more. Make sure that you draw the lower ribs in and you don't let them pop out. This will be easier to see from this side view. Keep the ribs in as you straighten the arms. And then once you're done stretching, go ahead and release the hands down and come back to your standing position. The deltoid originates at the lateral clavicle, the acromion process, and the spine of the scapula. It inserts onto the deltoid tuberosity of the humerus, and its action is shoulder abduction, or drawing the shoulders away from the body in the frontal plane. The deltoid has a triangular shape that wraps around the side of the shoulder. Another muscle that shares this action of shoulder abduction is the supraspinatus. It originates at the supraspinous fossa of the scapula. It inserts onto the greater tubercle of the humerus, and its action is shoulder abduction as well as stabilization of the shoulder. The supraspinatus is a smaller muscle than the deltoid, but as we move through our exercise, see if you can feel how both muscles work together to abduct the shoulder. So come to a standing position. Feel free to use weights here, maybe a 1 or 2 pound weight, or you can use food cans. You can also do this exercise without any type of weight at all. Have your feet right underneath you, your legs are long and strong, and draw your navel in toward your spine. Keep the arms long, and then reach both arms to the sides to about shoulder height. Then lower the arms back down alongside the body. Do this a few more times. Notice how the deltoid muscle and the supraspinatus muscle work to abduct the shoulder joint. Make sure that you have a lot of space for your neck so that you're not using any accessory muscles to try to do this motion, just using the deltoids and the supraspinatus muscles. Once you have done about 10 repetitions of this action, try holding the arms out to the sides for about 10 seconds. Once you are finished, bring the hands back down by your sides, and think about doing another set of 10 repetitions followed by a 10-second hold. The infraspinatus originates at the infraspinous fossa of the scapula, and it inserts onto the greater tubercle of the humerus. Its action is lateral rotation of the humerus, and it stabilizes the shoulder. The infraspinatus shares its insertion and action with another muscle. This muscle is called the teres minor. Teres minor originates at the lateral margin of the scapula. It also inserts onto the greater tubercle of the humerus, and its action is lateral rotation of the shoulder. Both the infraspinatus and the teres minor work together to laterally rotate the shoulder, so we will do one exercise for these two muscles. Come once again to your strong standing position. If you'd like to use some light weights here, about 1 to 2 pounds, or some food cans, feel free to do so, but this exercise can also be felt without any weights at all. Bend the elbows and keep the elbows right next to the rib cage for the duration of the exercise. Think of spinning your humerus open so that your palms face the sides of the rooms, and then spin the humerus back. As you spin the humerus open, this action is lateral rotation of the humerus. Do about 10 repetitions of this lateral rotation. Both the infraspinatus and the teres minor work to laterally rotate the humerus. So notice where you feel this muscular activation. You should feel it right behind and below the joint of the shoulder. The subscapularis originates at the subscapular fossa of the scapula. Remember that the subscapular fossa is on the anterior side of the scapula, so the part of the scapula that faces the rib cage. It inserts onto the lesser tubercle of the humerus, and the action of the subscapularis is to medially rotate and stabilize the humerus. To experience the action of the subscapularis, go ahead and drop one of your weights if you are holding them, and then bend your elbow holding the weight. Keep your elbow right next to your rib cage for the duration of the exercise. Medially rotate your humerus bone so that your forearm and your palm come across the body. Then bring your arm back to the beginning position. So you're spinning the humerus in and then reaching it back to the beginning. This is the action of medial rotation and the action of the subscapularis muscle. Do about 10 repetitions of this medial rotation before switching sides. And remember to keep your elbow right next to your rib cage. If you allow the elbow to reach out, you'll be using other muscles besides the subscapularis. So really try to keep it next to your body as you spin the humerus in and then reach it back to the beginning position. Do about 10 repetitions on your second side before coming back to your first side to do another 10 repetitions. Thank you for joining me for Living Anatomy. I hope you enjoyed your experience. Feel free to take a few moments and jot down some notes on some of the muscles that you experienced today. Thanks again and have a great day.